So I thought it might be a bit of fun to do some editing on a live stream. Haven't done anything like this for quite a while, certainly not live. So I was just digging up some images this evening, having a look at what might be a nice thing just to work on. And then I thought maybe 3 images might be nice. Might not have enough time to go into a massive amount of detail on each, but just thought 3 different perspectives might be nice. So these are untouched raw pictures, all taken on this one. They're all taken in 2019, as you can see. So this one, as far as I know, was taken on my A7R3. In fact, let's expand the metadata here. Why can't I see the rest of the... Oh, here we go. So let's just get it all. Yes, so it's 85 1.4. As you can tell, I was quite a far distance away on the A7R3. And this one is also on the R3, on the 12 to 24 at f4. And this one also on the 12 to 24, as you probably would have guessed with a perspective like that. So I think what I'll do is I'll probably start with this. These were with Elbow in 2019. They had just announced their album Giants of All Sizes in Manchester, and I'd gone up to help with the announcement. Actually, I took a picture of a billboard on the day where the name of the album was being announced, and I might bring that up or post that on socials later because it's kind of a fun image. But I shall avoid getting distracted because it's 11:38 p.m. here. So so this gig was basically in the evening of the album announcement, and these are 3 different perspectives: one from the pit, one from the back of the crowd, and one from the back of the stage. So I'm going to start with this one. Now, often with a situation like this, I mean, you can tell here I was clearly exposing for the highlights here. Shooting in manual, as you can tell here on the right hand side. ISO 320, nice and low. On the A7R3, there's going to be very, very little noise. 85mm. The lens itself goes as fast as 1.4, but I was at 2.2, as you can tell, because I certainly had no need to open as far as 1.4. Obviously, shooting in RAW and exposing for the highlights like this gives me a lot of room to work with the image in a nice way. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go through some basic edits first. So I don't know how familiar you are with, for those of you who aren't familiar with the histogram view in Lightroom, but very often when I start with an image like this, I'm keeping an eye on basically clipping at either end in the shadows or in the highlights here. So for example, with this, I might just start to bump up exposure a little bit. Now you see very quickly, if you look at that top right triangle, the top right of the histogram, that is starting to show some clipping. Now that clipping will be occurring in the brightest parts of the image, right in the middle of those spotlights. But I don't mind a little bit of it. But what I might do is just bring the exposure up, just for argument's sake. Now, I have edited these images before, but I'm starting fresh for the sake of this video. And then I'm going to bring this down a little bit. Now, if you watch, see, now that triangle has gone grey up on the top right here, that basically means those highlights are no longer clipping there. Now, I can adjust the shadows here, and you can see the clipping also at the other end on the histogram. So there's great amount of flexibility in this image, and having just that nice shallow depth of field from a shot from this distance, you can actually, I mean, you've obviously the crowd, if I just zoom in, they're only slightly out of focus. So even at 2.2 at this distance, it is a reasonable depth of field, more than enough on a fast lens like this to get everyone in sufficient focus. But Guy Garvey is obviously, well, as far as I'm aware, I had my focus point placed manually over him in order just to make sure that he was pin sharp. This is one of those images where it actually really helps knowing the artist and knowing the music, because you get moments like this when you know that they're going to put their arm up, and you can get just a nice moment like this. So it's also interesting, there was a bit of mist in the air on the night that this was shot, which definitely helps with just on obviously a lot of haze on stage, dry ice, and it is one of those things that just helps, you know, really show up the lights in the atmosphere. So what I might do is just bring the clarity up a little bit. It's one of those things, as we've probably all seen, if you go ape with clarity, as I remember when I first discovered the clarity slider, it was like I put every image to 11. This is many years ago. I think everyone goes through that phase, or maybe it was just me, but I'm pretty sure it was a bit like when HDRs first came out. People went a bit mental. So I'm just going to put that up slightly. Now I might actually play, I always, by the way, shoot at a gig in auto white balance, although I shoot everything else manual. White balance is a battle I choose not to have live, because often, depending on the quality of the lighting, there might be different color temperatures for all the different lights, and you know, there's no one value that really accurately reflects what the human eye saw when you're there. So I often, it's a mixture of your memories of the event, or sometimes you're just looking to stylize something. And I guess this is the argument between whether you're shooting for press or shooting creatively. If you're shooting for the artist for a tour program, you can totally feel free to change the white balance to something totally that it wasn't like on the night. But if you're shooting for a newspaper and you're documenting, well, then there are different rules there, and that's a whole conversation. But I was shooting for the artist. Now I'm actually going to warm this up slightly warmer than it was on the night. It definitely wasn't cool like that. It was I think it was about there, that 3300, as you can see. But I'm going to bring it up a bit more here. Just get that slightly warm vibe. Now I'm going to go back in, just have a look at the sharpness. So the sharpness is really, really good on it. And obviously with the noise being quite low, I mean, I can increase it further. This is one of those things that doesn't come across particularly well on YouTube, because it's already compressed by the very nature of sending it down at 1080p when I'm obviously working on a much higher res screen. So there's not really much point in spending a large amount of time with sharpness. Sometimes on noisy images you really have to be careful with because excess sharpness and the noisy image can really, I guess, bring out that noise a lot more, but this image certainly isn't noisy. This image doesn't really need much more. I mean, if you were looking to stylize it further, and again, this is the difference between, you know, documenting and being creative. You know, you might look at, for instance, the age-old trick of putting a little bit of blue in the shadows, just to add a little bit of vibe. But that would be an image that, well, for argument's sake, I'm pretty sure the band would like. And some of the edits I did of this sequence of images on the night were very much, you know, along this kind of line. But I just, yeah, when I was picking images for tonight, I thought, wouldn't it be cool just to pick 3 different perspectives from the same gig? So I'm going to, actually, do I have the chat window open? I bet nobody's here. Or maybe you are here. If you are here, feel free to type something. If you're not here, type something anyway. But I guess maybe some people might watch this back on playback. Anyway, it's good practice. So I think I'm going to go into this image next. So this is obviously taken from the pit on a 12-24. And let's just look at the settings. So ISO 2000, A7R3. Even though it's at 2000, it's still pretty clean, as you can tell. I'll zoom in a moment. Focal length is at 24, which is as tight as this particular lens goes. Shooting manual again. The focus isn't nailed on his face. It's more on the guitar. But with the composition of this image, it's not really a problem, because the way the guitar is against these wires, it actually works well as the focal point of the composition, especially with the guitar, Pete, the guitarist there, bass guitarist, his eyes kind of drawing you to his hands, and the hands are pin sharp. So that is one of those situations where you don't mind if the eyes are not perfectly in focus. But I remember taking this because it was just really interesting with his pose, the way it slotted into that gap between the monitor speaker and these plugs, DIN plugs, is that what they're called? I can't remember the name of them. Big heavy plugs that you see at all these gigs for connecting speakers and monitors and the like. But it's as a composition I was quite happy with it, and it's one of those ones where you could do a lot with it, but it's a kind of image for me. It's just, I do think it lends itself to black and white. Now, obviously, I mean, I do have presets for all different starting points for images, but I'm not going to touch any presets while we're doing this, because it's just better for the sake of this stream just to do it all manually with no starting points. So what I would like to do first of all is I'm just going to stick in basically the black and white auto, and that gives you just a bog standard black and white, and then play with the different color channels and how they're interpreted, and then we can start looking at things like grain and so on. So let's just actually hit reset. I just want to look at the color of his shirt. So red shirt, kind of magenta lights in the background, orange there, bit of blue on the left. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to go back in to black and white here. And let's start with the shirt. So, see, I want him to stand out a little bit. I mean, there's no point in having him like that, and you can see how that causes horrible color clipping if you drag it. But I don't want his shirt to be just the same shade or the same look as that monitor speaker. So I'll bring it up just a little bit, just to start off with. Now, we had some orange, as I recall, down here. Let's have a look. See, it's one of those things that you don't want it to be too distracting in the foreground. So that is making that sticker across the bottom a little bit too bright. So I'm just going to bring it down so it's there, but it's not distracting. I've actually brought it back down to 0 by accident, but anyway, that's fine. There was some blue on that monitor speaker, and sure enough. And again, I think it's nice just to bring that blue up a little bit like that. So it just adds a bit of depth. So you still have the shape coming together, but it's more obvious that they're separate elements when it's done like that. Now the magenta lights at the top, either purple or magenta. Let's see how close I was. Yeah, more in the, well, we'll try purple as well. But again, let's make them more part of the composition. They're very much just in the background here, but if I just bring them up a little, they're certainly more part of the composition. Let's just, now if I go too far, you'll get that ugly noise. You don't want that. Generally, in Lightroom, maxing any slider is never a good thing. There are exceptions, but generally, driving a slider to 11 is normally not the best. Even it might look great small, and then when you look at it big and you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have. And the purple slider is definitely having an effect on it. But I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, let's have a look. I didn't specifically spot green or aqua or yellow. Doesn't mean they're of course there in some elements, but they're not going to be major. Yeah, there's hardly any difference there. Again, there's a little bit of change to these background lights. Bringing it down. I'm just dragging it to the left here. Just bring down those background ones. Because if I have those background ones too bright, they take away from the separation of the foreground and background. So I'm just going to bring them down a little bit. And let's look at yellow. And yellow again is more affecting those lights behind them. So again, I think I'll just bring those down a little bit. Now the next thing with an image like this, sometimes cameras can be too good, and you just want a bit of grain. Funny, you spend years like trying to lose image noise, and then you get rid of most of it. You're like, I want it back. So let's just for a start play with adding some grain. Again, I won't spend a huge amount of time on grain because I have a funny feeling this might not come well across in compression, but I will zoom in, which I'm sure will help. Not sure why my Lightroom is lagging a bit, but I shall investigate that later. The size of the individual grain elements now, jacking that right up, obviously totally reduces the sharpness of the image, but it can add a little bit of vibe to it. And this is an image, I think, which will benefit from bringing up the roughness slightly. So let's just go out. I almost feel that I need to increase the grain slightly. I'm going to leave it there for now, because when we play with the contrast and clarity, the effect of that is slightly amplified as well. So let's just go here. Let's have a look at the contrast. Yeah, so upping the contrast is really quite nice there. We've still got this separation. I mean, I could use local adjustment if need be to bring up the shadows in this area, but I might not need it. Now I've put the contrast quite high there, but I'm not losing any, I'm not causing any major problems in the image, so I'm quite happy to do that. Let's put clarity. Now again, let's not put clarity to max. As you can see, you can see if I put clarity to max, you just get, there's just something not quite right. It's almost like someone's leaned too heavily on the picture with a piece of charcoal. So let's just, now, I mean, it does look well around the 45, 50. It looks pretty nice. I'll leave it there at 47. And you know what? I think, let's just play with the highlights a bit. I took the background lights down a bit earlier, but adjusting the highlights overall means I'm affecting the highlights on all of the lights. So bring them all, the highlights on all the lights up a little bit. And that's quite nice. So I'm pretty happy with that, to be honest with you. Let's hit is it L for lights out? I can actually do full screen, because I'm on a super wide monitor. So if I set OBS to do full screen, it gives you this image which is going to be vertically too small for YouTube and harder to see stuff. So I'm not going to do full screen mode. I'm just going to hit lights. Actually, what I can do is drag this down, and that should help. And can I put that up? Yes, that should make it a bit bigger in your screen. And then hit lights out, and then with any luck, with it being a still image, and YouTube compression should make it look pretty decent when it's like that. Here's hoping. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to move on to the third image. Now, I love this third image, and this is what I love about this image is what essentially a super wide lens can give you. Let's first of all go into, but to continue what I was saying, what a super wide lens can give you is a super wide lens can give you a story, and there's a story in this shot. It's not War and Peace, but there's a story. So focal length 12mm. So I was really at the widest of this particular lens, 12 to 24. I was at f4. So I'm right at the back of the stage, and you've got, well, first of all, you've got the interaction of Guy Garvey, the lead singer, with the crowd, and he's, as I mentioned earlier, he's great at getting people waving their arms in the air. He's so many moments in their music that I could easily end up talking about and dragging on about that I won't go into now. But yeah, if you've not listened to these guys, you really should. And if you don't like them, don't blame me. But yeah, there's his interaction with the crowd, but you've also got the interaction between the bass player, keyboardist and drummer, and you can tell that essentially that something's happened between the two of them primarily, and the drummer has obviously witnessed it. And it's just, yeah, I mean, they have a really good rapport, this band. It's lovely to work with them. It's just a nice positive environment. There's no politics. It's just, and the whole, in fact, the same applies to the whole crew. And I'm lucky that's the case with most of the artists I work with, actually, that there is that kind of environment. But I love the story in this shot, and captured by 12 to 24. So the considerations here, I would like to bring up the crowd to some extent, but realistically, these ones in the back, they're too far gone. If I try and, there's no point trying to expose for them. There's too little detail. But what I can do is certainly improve here. Maybe you might involve pulling back highlights a little bit on his face, hopefully without the need for any local adjustment. But let's just start having a play. Come on, develop module, you can do it. I don't know why this machine is freezing tonight. Oh, come on, wheel. This is not a good sign. There we go. So I just want to look at the color temperature first, actually. I'm just going to leave it there for now. I brought it up slightly. In fact, let's confirm that I did bring it up. 5288. Reset. No, I brought it down. So let's leave it at 5450. Anyway, obviously you can just ignore me, basically, therefore. That's the takeaway from that. Okay, first of all, I want to look at the overall exposure of the image. So if I bring it up, you can see a little bit more in the crowd in that midsection of the image. But the highlights are definitely a bit far gone here, if you look on the face here. Highlights everywhere else are okay. Oh, this might be occasion. I might actually just use the local adjustment brush here. And let's put it on highlights. And let's just bring it there. Let's just paint a little bit over. Let's bring it down. And it's just enough to rescue that. And let's just have a look at the other two. And look at our lights over here. Our lights over here. I don't feel it needs it anywhere else. So let's get out of the local adjustment. Now, I want to see when I push up the clarity a little bit, what it does with the crowd. Definitely brings them out more, but I want to compare on what that does with these gentlemen in the foreground. So I'm at 50 there. I just want to have a look if I can get away with using one value. I'm pretty sure I can. There's nothing untoward. Yeah, and the same here. So I'm pretty happy with that. Wide images, sometimes they don't require a lot. I mean, this picture feels behind the scenes. So by the very nature of it, that element of rawness, and you don't want to make it look perfect. I mean, one thing you could, and I'll demonstrate here, lens correction. So Lightroom knows what lens was on the camera, and that's correcting for instance, some of the built-in vignetting on the lens at that focal length with the profile that's built in, and also for the actual distortion on the image. And if I just turn them off, you see it's technically better, but for me, I actually prefer it with the corrections turned off. You just feel that it's made the image, it makes it feel a little bit more constrained. And I like the vignette in this case. Having the vignette draws the attention more towards this central area, which is the meeting point of this conversation between the three of them. and also drawing your attention to what's happening with Guy Garvey on the crowd. So is this a situation where I think I don't want the correction? Let's have a look at the contrast. Now that is quite nice, that with a bit of upping the contrast a bit. Our lights are popping more. I will now, although we did the local adjustment on the keyboard's face, I'm going to just bring the highlights down overall a little bit, because by upping the contrast, I could definitely felt that all the highlights across the image had gone a little bit high. Now this is an image that could definitely look fabulous in black and white. I'm going to leave it in color for the sake of this edit. I'm not going to do too much more to this, to be honest with you. I would like to just check the temperature again now that we've done some other edits. Yeah, it's slightly lower than what it came in as by default, but I'm pretty happy with that, to be honest with you. So there's 3 images from 3 different perspectives. We've got the back of the crowd, if Lightroom ever manages to switch. Let's put it in library view so the next 2 switch a bit more quickly. And let's let the machine actually load the image. Why are you freezing, Mac? There's nothing else running, like nothing apart from OBS, which I've never had an issue with before. Anyway, I digress. But yeah, 3 images, 3 different perspectives. I run around a lot during the gig. Obviously, I was working for the band. You'd never get to all these 3 locations with 3 songs, and then a nice close-up perspective, and back of the stage, and a bit of a story to it. Hope this has been interesting. Stick any comments in the comments section, and let me know if you want me to do more of these. It's the live streaming side of things. I mean, I love making full length videos, but the live streaming is something that I would like to maybe do more of. It's just that little bit more organic and slightly unplanned, and maybe you can see more of my process rather than me saying here's the before, here's the after, but not actually get involved in how I got to A to Z and where I went in between. But yeah, thank you very much. Hit sub if you like. No problem if you don't. And I'll hopefully see you on here again soon. And let's see if I can remember how to end this stream.